Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. It is feeling pretty good to be a Big Ten fan right about now with the Big Ten going undefeated. That's right, perfected schlag, as you might have heard on a comedy show that I enjoy, that you probably do enjoy as well from the past, that being The Office. Anyway, it's perfect right now for the Big Ten. The Big Ten is absolutely dismantling teams in the NCAA tournament. Nobody other than one team has won by a margin of less than 10. In fact, the smallest margin of victory was Michigan over UC San Diego, and the next one after that was Purdue had a 12-point win over High Point. So the only team that has come even close was UC San Diego. That's on par with Michigan, right? That's what they've done all season long. That's what we come to know from the Wolverines. And other than that, I mean, nobody's even been within 12 because that's just how crazy good this conference is, and nobody wants to give them their flowers for it. Nobody wants to talk about how the team should have had, or how the conference should have had more than 8 teams in it. But right, if they were gonna say, oh, North Carolina showed they deserved to be in because they took down San Diego State and all this stuff, well, you have to recognize it now with the Big Ten as well. Look at this. We got Philip coming in. Philip, we got a whole segment on this to end the show. Don't you worry. Big Ten 8-0, SEC 8-6. I've compiled all of the records of all the Big Ten teams, or the conferences in the tournament so far that have had more than one team in the conference. We're going to get to that in the end. I do want to highlight some things from today that I thought were significant, and then we'll talk a little bit about Michigan State, Oregon, Illinois, and Maryland. But I mean, let's be honest, like, the Big Ten dominated today. Like, the Big Ten has been dominating this tournament. I mean, what is this? Why didn't certain teams get in? Why were certain teams seated lower than they should have been? It's absolutely crazy. But let's go through and talk about the day a little bit, right? So I don't know about you guys, but I'm feeling like the the NCAA tournament hasn't had as many upsets as it had in the past. It hasn't felt like there's been as many close games as there has been in the past. There's parts of this when I'm like, what in the world? Like, it doesn't really look like something that I've seen in the past, and I do wonder if that is more because of the transfer portal, if it's more because of older players being gone from younger team, or from smaller teams, with the COVID year going away, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Do you guys have any hypotheses, any theories on why maybe we don't have as many close games? Like, even Alabama and Robert Morris today. That was a game that was like close, but at the same time, Alabama won that by, I think, 9 in the end, so it wasn't like all that close at the end. So I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. If you guys have any theories, put them in the chat here. We have Philip here in the chat as always. He says Tennessee versus UCLA, Michigan versus Texas A&M, and Illinois beating Kentucky. The Big Ten versus SEC matchups in round 2. Philip, you know where my head is at, and you're always talking about where it's going. I was going to reference all of those things. Big Ten versus SEC coming up. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be cool to see how the Big Ten stacks up against the SEC. I'm confident in the Big Ten. Right? I'm confident we're going to take these SEC teams down, show them that they were overrated all season long, show them that ESPN just had their SEC bias out there and everything. And let's be honest, they had a bunch of teams in the AP poll, because that's what the AP poll does. The AP poll, yeah, Philip, you're right, man. Telepathic powers. The AP poll always biases to the SEC. Since it couldn't happen in football this year, they tried to drag it on over to basketball. Okay, I'm over exaggerating here a little bit, but you see what I'm saying. Like, the SEC was overrated this season. It's obvious looking at that. You look at the teams in the Big Ten that have been dominating right now, and the teams in the SEC that have been too close or that have lost. It's been crazy. Speaking of some of those upsets from today, since we didn't get very many of them, we had New Mexico take down Marquette. That was absolutely crazy seeing Richard Pitino go and take down Marquette. Marquette was a heavy favorite, I think, by a lot of people. I think that there were some people picking the upset there, but a lot of people were saying, the Mountain West can't do it. The Mountain West hasn't earned their stripes to get all these teams in there. But nope, that's not the case. The Mountain West showing that they do belong, and getting that win over Marquette was huge for them. And then the upset that that Burke and I called in our live filling out the bracket, which was Colorado State over Memphis. So if I'm struggling a little bit, guys, it is 12:30 on the East Coast here because the NCAA tournament just decided that the 3 last games of day 2 were all going to be Big Ten games. And I was like, come on, help me out here. But they didn't want to do that. So I'm still here, though, after dark. 12:30 at night. I'm here for you. We got Sonny Verma coming in. He's going to talk about the Illinois game, obviously, with us. The Michigan State Oregon game were going on at the same time. So I went ahead and went live. I'll talk about those 2 games. We'll bring him on for the Illinois game, talk about Maryland, and then talk about some of this Big Ten SEC stuff here at the end as well. Let's see what other comments we got really fast, and then we'll move on to talking some Michigan State. Demetrius, thanks for being here. He says, just put in an 8-leg Big Ten parlay. There we go, Demetrius. There we go, man. Let's get 8 teams in the Sweet 16, 8 Big Ten teams in the Sweet 16. That sounds amazing, and I would love for you to win your parlay, man. I would love that. I'd love that. Brandon says, love how the media will say now the SEC is tied for the most wins. You are exactly right, Brandon. That is exactly what they'll say. Oh, look at all these wins this team's had. Well, you know what? When you got 14 teams in, you should have the most wins in the first round, right? Right? Even when you had one in the playing game. But, of course, Texas couldn't be in the playing game. How stupid was that, right? That Texas made the NCAA tournament. Like, I talked about that on the show beforehand. I was like, I told people in the preview when I was kind of doing some bracketology stuff, I said Texas is going to get in because they're an SEC team and because they have these quad 1 wins, which probably aren't actually quad 1 wins, but they got them. So they were up there on their resume, but it's absolutely ridiculous. They put that Texas team in there. Texas fires Rodney Terry right after that. It's a clown show down there in Texas when it comes to basketball. It's a clown show. Just absolutely crazy. Philip says, you and Burke picked Akron, even though I told you not to. Just strongest. Listen, I had to pick something from Ohio, Philip. Give me... I'm hurting right now. My Ohio State team, I'm hurting right now. They're nowhere to be found in the tournament, so I needed to root for something from Ohio. That's the problem I have when I think too much with my heart. So if Texas was in, Ohio State should have been in, to be honest. Look, I'm going to make a case for it in the last segment, why the Big Ten is the best. I'm going to make a case for why Ohio State should have been in. Not just Indiana, but Ohio State. Ohio State fans, for some reason, will probably get mad at me about it. That's fine, whatever. Ohio State fans are the biggest critics of the Ohio State program. It's kind of crazy, but I think they project, many of them, not all of them. I think many of them project their football expectations on the basketball program, and it's a little unfair in my opinion, but it is what it is. So Demetrius, gotta say, I was a little worried about Bryant's size, but after seeing how Michigan State handled the size and zone, I think they will go far this season. Yeah, I mean, listen, this is what the tournament is about, right? The tournament is about responding to adversity when it comes at you in games. Even if it's a 15 seed, it doesn't matter. Like, if it's a 15 seed that punches you in the mouth, how are you going to respond? In the second half, Michigan State responded so daggone well that you look at this team and you're like, okay, even if they have a slow start, they are still going to be able to respond. Now, it is a 15 seed, right? This isn't them going up against Auburn or something like that, but it shows they are going to do that. They're not going to be afraid of the moment. This is a Tom Izzo team, hard nose, ready to go. So this Michigan State team, I believe in them. I think they can make it to the Final Four. I think they have the path. Not easily, because nothing comes easy in the NCAA tournament, but I love the path to the Elite Eight for them, and I think they could take down Auburn, and they could make it to the Final Four. And then once you get to the Final Four, I say it every single time, once you get to the Final Four, it is what it is from there. Like, every single team is good in there. Anybody can win. It is what it is. So Philip says, don't hire Diebler when a perfectly good Philip, dude, you and I, man. I mean, this is what I was saying the entire time. I was like, Sean Miller is right there. And then Ohio State fans were like, no, he cheated. It's like, okay, sure. You can pay players now, though. So whatever. Bill Self did the same thing. He's still at Kansas, but whatever. I don't know. I don't want to rehash it. Yeah, we don't need to talk too much Ohio State. We'll get Ohio State at the end. So let's talk Michigan State though, right? I mean, Michigan State tonight, they came out clunky. It wasn't looking good. I mean, it was like at one point I turned to my wife who was like halfway asleep by the time this game started, and I was like, it's Brick City. It is Brick City right there. For Michigan State, the biggest concern early on was that they looked lost defensively. They were losing some of their assignments. They were getting switched up. They didn't have great communication defensively. That was my biggest concern going into it. Offensively, I was like, okay, these guys will get it going. They'll get into the fast break. They'll get some turnovers. They'll be fine. But they never really got there in the first 5-10 minutes, and that's when it started to concern me. I was like, okay, I'm waiting on this. This could happen, and it never really got there. So when you look at the differential, Bryant was up, and then Michigan State went up, and then Bryant came back up, and then there toward the end of the half, that's when really Michigan State really got going. And then once you hit the second half, it was just Michigan State from there on out. I mean, at the end of the day, they came out better balanced. They came out with better chemistry. I don't like at first I thought maybe it was nerves with Michigan State. Like, is Michigan State just nervous right now? But I mean, why would a Tom Izzo team be nervous, right? Like, I don't know. It's just it's crazy. But this is where a balanced team comes out and is so. It's so valuable to have such a balanced team, to have players all over the place that can make plays. I did feel like maybe I would have liked to see a little bit more of kind of Jace Richardson doing his thing. I mean, that's one of the big things that has been happening this season that I've loved. But at the end of the day, Cohen Carr takes over. He has 18 and 9 rebounds in this game, gives himself a block, had a 16 plus minus. Jace Richardson, 15 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 15 plus minus. And then Fears. I keep getting Jeremy and Jeremiah Fears mixed up. As I was watching Oklahoma at the same time, I was going back and forth between the two games because Oklahoma lost today too. That's another SEC that went down. Love it. 11 points for Fears in this one, 3 rebounds, 6 assists for him, a 21 plus minus. Love to see that. I mean, Fears, man, like when Fears is on it, he doesn't have to be shooting those threes, right? Like he's not like some spectacular 3-point shooter. He did shoot 4 of them this game. He does shoot a pretty high percentage just because I think he doesn't take a whole lot of them. But, for me, like Fears, he hits you those threes when you need them. But at the end of the day, like, he's not going to come out there and hit 3 or 4 threes for you a game. That's just not Fears' game, which is fine. You don't need him to be that game because you got guys out there that can score. You got Jace Richardson. Jaden Akins is putting up a bunch of threes pretty much every single game. Akins with 10 3-point attempts in this one. Maybe wanted to shoot a little bit less. Maybe a little bit less Akins, but at the end of the day, you're not going to critique it too much. Michigan State wins this one 87-62. Not a whole lot of analysis other than Michigan State started slow. Michigan State corrected it there at the end of the first half, and in the second half, balance, depth, everything. Which, by the way, did you guys hear Ben McCollum's comments on depth earlier today where he was like, why would I want depth? That's just going to get my 5 dudes out of rhythm. And it's like, this is why you want depth. Like, this is why you want depth, Ben McCollum, because when you don't have guys performing, you throw other guys in there, and you have guys who have fresh legs at the end of the game. How many times this season have I looked at the Purdue team and just said, like, man, and I'm not trying to, have Purdue catch strays tonight or anything, but they're a good example of this. A Purdue team that's just like dead legs there at the end of the game, because especially at the end of the season when they are so dead. I mean, obviously, Braden Smith, TKR, like still great players, but when you're running everything through them, it's so difficult for them. In this Michigan State team, you got Fears you can run it through, Richardson you can run it through, Akins, Holloman was huge in this game for him. What was his point total? 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists. He had a 16 plus minus, 4 for 5 from the 3. Like, if you're gonna get Holloman shooting 4 for 5 from 3, give me this Michigan State team to win the national championship, even if they start like this. Like 4 for 5 from 3 for Trey Holloman. This dude's a dog. I love Trey Holloman. I love his mentality. I love that he can be back next year. And I mean, I just can't say enough good things about Trey Holloman. Dude is fantastic. So, all right, Sonny's gonna come on here in a minute. Let's talk Oregon really fast before Sonny gets on, so that way we can talk about his precious Illini once he gets here. I know you guys got some comments. Let me see if you guys got anything about no, mostly coach talk and stuff like that. That's fine. That's fine. Oh, Demetrius says, I think they had to adjust the length of Bryant in the first half. Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you have some of the, I don't know, smaller guards. I mean, they're not the longer guards. You know, Holloman, Fears, guys like that. They're not the biggest guards in the world, so they do have to adjust to that kind of stuff. And the front court for Michigan State had some issues there at the beginning as well. So yeah, you're right there, Demetrius. They did have to adjust to that a little bit more. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Some stuff I missed because I was trying to watch 3 games at one time. I'm like, come on, NCAA tournament, give us a break here. Oregon wins this one though. Fantastic game for them. Oregon wins 81-52, and slow starts be damned for Oregon. Like, Oregon has had slow starts this season all over the place, and Jackson Shelstad was just like, not happening this time. Not happening at all. Like, when I look at the point differential in this game for Oregon versus Liberty, like, it's the first minute, and it's just like, just way, way up for Oregon because they just came out. They punched Liberty in the mouth. We talk about that score against Georgia where it was like, what was it? Gonzaga was up like 27-3. It wasn't that bad in this one, but still, Oregon, I mean, into the first half, 44-20 for them. Liberty stays, somewhat reasonable there after that, but 37-32. So Brandon says the full potential of Oregon was on display. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, it was full potential, but I think this was also just a game where Oregon played the way they wanted to play, and Liberty didn't have an answer for it, right? And I don't think, like, maybe it's a little bit of Oregon got lucky. I don't know. I don't want to say that, though. I don't think it was Oregon got lucky. I think at the end of the day, Oregon, like, they just played this game the way they wanted to play it. They got the ball inside to Nate Biddle. Nate Biddle facilitated all around the court, whether he was at the top of the key, whether he was inside. Jackson Shelstad gave you a game where he came out and was complete throughout it all. So I think this Oregon team played the way they wanted to play the entire game, and this was a game where the team didn't have to kind of go off script, right? And that's not to say they can't go off script, but I think when Dana Altman has a plan, they go in, they make it happen. This is one of the top 20 teams in the nation, top 15 maybe teams in the nation, when Oregon can come in and play the way they want to play. They had issues in Big Ten play, but let's not forget, like, this was a team that went undefeated in the out of conference. Oregon went undefeated. It wasn't until after that buzzer beater versus UCLA when they really struggled. Now, they did have some games. I think it was Oregon State when they struggled early on, right? But at the end of the day, like, this is what Dana Altman lives for. This is the NCAA tournament. This is March. This is where Dana Altman lives, right? Like, we got 2 Mr. Marches right now in the Big Ten tournament. You're gonna have, Mr. March 1A and Tom Izzo, Mr. March 1B and Dana Altman, because these guys been doing it for so long. These guys are just masters when it comes to when it comes to making it happen. So, absolutely great stuff from Altman, his crew, everything there. It was fantastic. So I love what we saw from Oregon in this game. Oregon did a fantastic job. Playing through Nate on the inside. Liberty also, like, they're normally a better shooting team than this, but they didn't shoot well. I do think some of it was Oregon's defense and what they were able to do on the perimeter against them. But yeah, Philip, I'm with you, man. I trust Altman in the tournament. I trust him too. So, all right. Hey, let's hit a commercial really fast, and then we'll come back. We'll start talking about this Illinois team. I think Sonny's Locked On Illini show just ended a few minutes ago, so he should be coming in at any point in time. So we'll start talking Illinois, and then we'll get Sonny in here to talk about it with us. So stick with us, everybody. Let's check out CBB Analytics really fast. CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site, it's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. Appreciate you being here with us. Please do like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Appreciate it. If you're on Twitter, hit that repost button, retweet, whatever you call it, button there. If you're listening on podcast, 5-star review, all that stuff. Super helps the channel, helps everything out. We're trying to grow the basketball channel a lot more. We kind of separated the two because I know there's some people that just like football, there's some people that just like basketball, some people like both. But I kind of separated the two just to try to better serve the people in this one. So wanted to do that for you all. All right, Sonny should be coming in soon. As we wait for Sonny, let's talk about the Fighting Illini in this one. Brandon, I'm right there with you, man. Illinois looked awesome tonight. Philip with the ILL, INI, and then KJ so close to the triple-double there. Unfortunately, I wasn't listening to the game, so I don't know. I didn't know if they jinxed him or not. Maybe they were, giving one of the, he just needs one more rebound in this one. I don't know if they jinxed him or not. Thankfully, didn't seem to matter because Illinois. When was it? It was pretty much the start of the second half where Illinois just kind of went and did their thing, went on a run. I mean, Illinois went on some pretty big runs in this one, 11-2 run there at the end of the first half. There in the second half, they went on a 14-4 run. Xavier did have an 11-2 run there at the second half at one point, but I mean, they answered that really, really quick and just took care of business. So this Illinois team, I think the scariest thing is I didn't even feel like this was. There we go. Here we got Sonny. Let's see. Let's get Sonny in here. Sonny, I was just telling the people, man, I didn't even feel like this was ceiling Illinois. Like people, every time Illinois wins, people want to talk about Illinois' ceiling and how good they were and everything. And don't get me wrong, Illinois was excellent tonight, but
Yeah.
I didn't feel like this was ceiling Illinois. I felt like this was solid Illinois. And if we're going to get solid Illinois, that brings the floor of this team way, way higher. And that gives you the opportunity against a team like Tennessee, possibly Houston, to show that ceiling and keep moving on. What were your thoughts tonight?
Yeah, and again, I apologize for being late. The post game, I'm locked on line. I took a little bit longer, but to kind of echo your thoughts, I think today was a fantastic game by Brad Underwood and that coaching staff. Like, they game planned it perfectly. Anyone with eyes could see there was a certain way to attack Xavier. If the only game script that Xavier had a chance of winning with was if they somehow closed the rebounding gap, which ended up in Illinois' favor, I think 42-23. I guess you got the stats right up there. And the other one was basically Illinois took advantage of that size. Tommy Visic got the ball almost every time down early in the game. And to me, it was Illinois sending a message. It's like, hey, we know we're bigger than you, and we're going to show that we're bigger than you. So it's just one of those where, the stars all starred today, which is all you can ask for. Kasparis, 16, 9, and 10. I think this could have been the game that a lot of the national media or national fans who aren't necessarily Big Ten fans were introduced to Will Riley. And that name, a guy who's been getting better since essentially February hit, mid-January even. And, he had a standout performance today. I just think it was an all-around good effort against a team which, according to the metrics over the past month and a half, 2 months, has been a top 25 team. So it's not like Xavier was a smaller school who upset Texas. No, Xavier deserved to be there. And, they beat a Texas team 2 days ago, and, Illinois just imposed their will on them. And that's all you can ask for them.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, they imposed their will on him for sure. Tomislav Visic was fantastic in this game. He had 20 points, 10 rebounds. He only had 1 assist, but I felt like the offense was just it was working so much better when the ball was in his hand. So I don't feel like the assist really, told the story of his ability to facilitate in this one. But Will Riley, 2 blocks in this one as well. Is he turned into a defender here, Sonny?
All around game. That's why,
Even
when he was 0-for-3 early in the game, in the Discord, in the Locked On Illini Discord, I was talking about, hey, Will is having one of his best games that I've seen of this year so far. And it's not showing up on the box score, but if you're just watching him, he's confident. He knows where to be. That was not the Will Riley we saw 2 months ago. 2 months ago, Will Riley would stand at the corner 3-point, and just wait for somebody to pass him the ball, and then he would shoot it, and more often than not miss it. And his game has completely transformed. And, I mentioned this too. Will Riley's development this year from day one to month 2 to today is going to be such a feather in Brad Underwood and the coaching staff's cap moving forward with other top recruits saying, hey, look, you come here, you're highly rated, we're going to develop you. And Will Riley is going to be like the poster board of something like that. I'm so happy for him just because he's had his struggles, but all season long, even Brad has said in games where he struggled that Will's the type of guy that you want in March. And this is the version of Will Riley that you want in March.
Yeah, true shooting percentage in this one was 82.6%. Another dude who had a really high true shooting percentage, and when this guy's on his offensive game, it completely changes the team for me because you can rely on KJ, you can rely on Tomislav, you can rely on Will Riley, but when you got Kylan Boswell going crazy, getting 15 points for you, shooting 3 for 4 from 3, like I said, 84.5% true shooting percentage, again, not the ceiling of this team, but just really, really solid in getting contributions from every player. Didn't feel like anybody had an off night. Even Trey White, who had a plus minus of just 1 in this one. So, maybe you could look at that and say he had an off night. He still had 7.7 rebounds. And he was still getting to the basket. Only played 28 minutes in this one, so he didn't exactly stuff the box score there. But at the end of the day, I didn't really look at this game and say anybody played bad. Everybody just did what they were supposed to do. It was a little slow to begin, but you get that to happen and you pull away in the end, as we saw in this game.
I mean, if you had told me before the game started that Fremantle and Conwell would have had a combined 17 points on 5 of 19 shooting, I wouldn't have believed you. But again, this is where I just go back to it's the game plan. You talk about Kylan Boswell. Conwell, unfortunately, had to meet defensive stopper Kylan today. And this is the type of games that he's really able to make the opposing point guard's life just miserable when Kylan is locked in as a defender. And he has been. But over the past 5-6 games, he's turned it essentially after that Duke game. After that Duke game, all the veterans kind of came together and they've stepped it up. And, you said it correctly. And a lot of, members of Locked On Line, I have said it. Kylan has been the X factor. When Kylan plays at this level, then you're talking about not just a second weekend possible appearance, but maybe even beyond that.
Yeah, I like Kylan obviously being able to play both ends of the court. His shooting ability is really what does it for me more than anything. Even if he doesn't have the cutting, even if he doesn't have the ability to get to the basket, if he can just hit a high percentage of 3-point shots early on, that's huge for them. It didn't look like Illinois was going to have great defense in this game early on. It looked like a sprint track meet at the beginning. It was back and forth, but it really felt like maybe 10 minutes in, I don't know where you would say, it really felt like Illinois finally locked down on that defense. And to me, that is when this Illinois team looks the most dangerous, is when that defense is there. That's when I was so high on them at the beginning of the season. That's when I had him number 1 on my power rankings, is when I saw the defense. I knew the offense would come, but once I saw that defense, I was like, this is huge. This is what this Illinois team needs. If they're going to get back to that, if Kylan Boswell, he's been good on defense all season long, but if he's going to get that support around him being a good lockdown defender, I mean, Give Brad his flowers, give Kylan Boswell, give everybody their flowers, because this is a team that, you said it, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year in some ways. This is a team that is looking like it's a good chance. I'm not going to say they're favored or say anything, it's a good chance they are going to make the Sweet 16. Obviously, got to get through Kentucky. That's a tough opponent, but still, good chance to be able to get to the Sweet 16, and that's huge for this team.
Yeah, I think I saw right before I hopped on here, Kentucky is a 1.5-point favorite. So, you're talking about a coin flip game, but JR, if they play like they played today, if I'm a Kentucky fan and, I'm relieved over my own victory, then, hey, let's put the Illinois game on next. Let's see and scout. I'd be worried. Because again, you see, when the stars are starring the way that they did today, not many teams can throw 4 or 5 guys out at you who can all score 15 plus points. And Trey White didn't today. Again, he only scored 7, but we've seen him score 15 plus on a nightly basis himself too. So, hopefully the momentum keeps going. last year, we're not going to be as fortunate as last year when who was it? Duquesne got that upset in the round one, and so that's who Illinois. They're certainly going to have to earn it on Sunday. A Sweet 16 appearance they're going to have to absolutely earn, but on a year where Brad Underwood had to replace 10 guys off of the roster from last year, obviously, I personally, I'm feeling very relaxed, really content right now.
Do you think let's look at Kentucky just for a second, and then if you have any final thoughts in this game, we'll get to that. Do you think Colin Boswell will be on Butler? Do you think he'll be on Owa? Like where do you maybe think Boswell would be, or maybe where do you think Boswell should be in this game? Who do you think he should be guarding? Because I think that's a key for them. Lamont Butler 0 points in their game against Troy, but Owa, I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Oweh, he had 20 against them in that game. So, I mean, what are your thoughts there? You think Boswell is a certain guy he should be defending? What do you think?
It's hard to say right now, just because I'm not as familiar with the Kentucky roster outside of just watching the game that they just played today.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those
Right.
where as I look over more highlights and tapes, I'll have a more definitive answer. But I will tell you, whoever's important to get the Kentucky offense running, that's who you stick Kylan on. And it doesn't have to be the point guard. It could be the two. Heck, Kylan is one of those guys where he can guard a three because he's built like a linebacker. Like he's just very broad, broadly built. So he's whoever Kentucky relies on to their offensive playmaker, that's who you're going to put Kylan on.
Yeah, no, I agree. Owa is their biggest contributor percentage-wise, according to Ken Palm. So he plays 70% of the minutes and stuff. Like he is their offense essentially. So I would guess probably on him. But I, like you, I have not watched a ton of Kentucky this season other than the game earlier today. So that's just a guess. But Brad's been watching the film. Brad knows.
Yeah.
So we'll trust Brad on this one.
I'm sure he knows all these guys a little bit better than you and I.
Any final thoughts on Illinois matchup with Kentucky this game? Anything before we move on to Maryland?
No, I'm looking forward to it. If they play like today, then I'm feeling pretty good on Sunday. But unfortunately, as someone who's watched every single minute of this Illini basketball season, I know that I can't rely on them playing like today. So it's just going to be simply one of those. I think it's going to be one of the best matchups of the second round. I can't imagine there being too many better ones than Kentucky, Illinois, but we'll see. I think it's a 4:15 tip-off for us here locally, and I'll be counting the minutes.
And in fairness, too, Kentucky, you haven't really been able to rely on them so much either. They lost to Ohio State, Clemson, Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt's a tournament team, but as we'll talk about here later on, should they have been a tournament team? I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, like Kentucky's had their struggles too, so we'll see what happens there. All right, Sonny. I don't know how much time we need to spend on this. Maryland just absolutely obliterates Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon was a nice little story in the tournament. What was it, a year or two ago? And they were something. They were something to like. But Maryland, they took that story and they shredded it, threw it into the fire. Tossed the fire into the ocean and said bye bye to Grand Canyon because they beat them 81-49 in this one. This Maryland team should be higher than a 4 seed. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but when this Maryland team is playing the way they want to play, when they're not getting into foul trouble, they're letting their guys do their thing. There's not many teams in the nation that's, going to beat Maryland in my opinion.
You don't have to tell me that. Illinois just couldn't hang with Maryland. Yeah, they're one of the teams I was very interested in seeing, and I'm going to keep an eye on them on Sunday, for the reasons I told you before, just because they're not a deep team themselves either. But they started off slow. I do think Grand Canyon was up early in that game, and so the game did have my attention, but they just flipped the switch, and Maryland was so clearly the better team. And, they took care of business. Like you said, it was like a 32-point victory or something like that. Really impressive. One of the more impressive performances of anyone in the Big Ten Conference. And we have a bunch of those.
Yeah, we do. We'll talk about it here in a second. Maryland did go on a 27-6 run in the first half, and in the second half they went on a 15-4 and a 17-5 run as well. So when you're looking for a team, I mean, and Maryland's done this season. Maryland did this to Ohio State. Maryland did this to Illinois at one point. Like, this is just what this Maryland team can do. They can go crazy. They can completely take down a team. And in 5 minutes of basketball, you can essentially lose the game to them if you're not careful. So Maryland did get good contribution from their sophomore 5-star. Deshaun Harris Smith gave them 11 points, 4 rebounds. He was their leading plus minus with 31 in this game. I mean, I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself and like say Deshaun Harris Smith is going to become a dude for this team here in the tournament, but not maybe not 11 points every game, but you get some good production from him off the bench, help out the rest of the starting lineup. Rodney Rice only had 9 in this one, so help him out there. Like, this could be another dimension to this Maryland team if DHS keeps playing that way.
And that's what make them even more dangerous, right? They're 5
Right.
guys that you can count on them. They've got arguably the best starting 5, in the conference all season long. But you're always wondering about the secondary characters, like who else can help Maryland. And it didn't seem like there really was anyone. But yeah, I mean, today, you saw a vision where, you're not talking about Maryland being a Sweet 16 team. I do think if they add another guy to that rotation, the way he played today, you're talking about possibly an Elite 8 run, which again, Kevin Willard, can you imagine you and I talking about this even a year ago? Absolutely not, but he did such a good job this year.
Yeah, he really did. He did such a good job. He might get himself a top 10 salary for coaches, but looks like that might not happen. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Kevin Willard comments and everything like that. I just think it's crazy. I think, Chris Collins is obviously getting what he wants at Northwestern. If people didn't see that news today, he's getting more resources and new contracts, stuff like that. That's going to help him. So that's huge for Chris Collins. Sounds like Kevin Willard wants the same thing. Otherwise, he might be hopping to Villanova. Do you have any thoughts on the Kevin Willard stuff?
Just why say that now?
Yeah.
I guess I don't understand. Just stay focused. It's like you haven't really been had this sort of team before, and so I would have tried to avoid the distractions. But that whole program, their AD just left, and so maybe there's some animosity between the two. But I'd never thought Maryland would have to worry about that. Like, they had the Under Armour guys, so I just always kind of assumed Under Armour would bankroll and they wouldn't have to deal with these issues. But maybe I was wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like they do have money, and maybe Kevin Willard is just, jealous of the money that's going to football.
Mhm.
And maybe he's saying to himself, this is a school that has a basketball program that can actually compete for national championships there. So why are we giving all our money to football? And I mean, I can't really say I disagree with
Yeah,
him, although
he's
the
right.
talent is in there in the state there from Maryland. They're not exactly a football school that's going to do that. So, as far as I'm concerned, you put your resources in the sport that you're going to win national championships in. But that's just me. At the end of the day, Derek Queen, 12 points, 15 rebounds in this one. Julian Reese, he was absolutely outstanding. He's pretty much the only the only player on this team that has like tournament experience. And so I do think that probably, played a little bit of a factor at the beginning of the game. But Julian Reese being a leader for this team, even though, like we've talked about, he's a little bit of a quieter guy, I think it's huge for them, and I think Julian Reese can really help this team continue to move on. They have Colorado State next. Colorado State took down Memphis. Kind of saw that one coming. A number of people talked about that one, so we'll see what Maryland does there. I like their road to get to the Sweet 16. Any other thoughts on Maryland, Sonny?
No, I mean, Maryland was a sleeper pick for a lot of people to go far in the tournament, and it's not by accident. They're a really good basketball team.
They are. They are. It's just unfortunate for them. They're either going to run into what, Florida, or who's the seed that won above the 8-9 seed? Was that Baylor? I forget who
I
it
don't
was.
know. Offhand, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I forget who it was. But Florida's probably most likely going to win that second round matchup, and that's going to be a really tough game for them if they do beat Colorado State and move on to them.
Florida
So,
and
all right,
UConn.
UConn. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, UConn just won today against Oklahoma. So, speaking of the SEC losing, Sonny, I have the conference records here, and the Big Ten leads the way as the only undefeated conference with more than 2 teams in the tournament. Of course, the West Coast Conference, they are 2-0, good for them. But these were the only conferences that had more than one team in the NCAA tournament. So obviously the SEC got 14 in. A little interesting the way it worked with them to be 8-6. Now, after getting 14 teams in, you hear a lot of them complain and say, well, a lot of them are the lower seeded teams, so they were supposed to lose anyway. And it's like, okay, if you were that good, though, it wouldn't have mattered if you were supposed to lose anyway or not. Some of those ones would win, and higher seeded teams lost as well, right? Georgia, Mississippi State, Missouri, all these teams. Texas was matched up with another team in the playing game, and they got beat by Xavier for no other for no other reason other than just Rodney Terry can't coach. Like
Alabama was,
they were on
getting
the ropes
nervous
today
at the end of
too.
their game today, and then the refs got involved a little bit, and I think the phone call came in, and they were able to take care of business. But yeah, and it's not just the records; it's the way the Big Ten was beating up on everyone right now. 8-6, sure, for the SEC, and you're saying the lower seeds lost. That's fine. But by that math, yeah, if you have more teams that make the Elite Eight, you can apply the math that way too. Yeah, when you have 14 teams that get in, some are bound just by mathematically to make it to the next round. And so there's no way you're an SEC fan and you feel happy with your showing. And a complete opposite if you're a Big Ten fan. Like literally, all of our teams showed up. Everyone put on a very dominating performance. There's
Other than
no
Michigan. Michigan was the only one that was close.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. Yeah, didn't that close up at the end? Weren't they playing pretty well?
Yeah, I mean Michigan kept pulling ahead, and then it was standard Michigan basketball this season. They'd
Yeah,
pull ahead,
right.
UC San Diego would get
Yeah,
closer, and then
yeah,
at the end you were like, okay, why is this game close? Michigan will win. Like, we
yeah.
know this.
But who knows? It's there haven't been many upsets this first round anyway. I do think round 2 is when we're gonna start seeing these Cinderella stories show up. So the job isn't done for the Big Ten. Like we've got some good matchups, including Illinois. Playing Kentucky, but Maryland plays, as you mentioned, Colorado State. Colorado State was a very trendy pick as soon as those brackets came out. Purdue plays a McNeese team that they should beat, but McNeese is athletic, and I'm going to be very curious to see how the Boilermakers match up, with McNeese. Trying to think of some of the other games. UCLA, Tennessee. Yeah, that. Yeah. I'm nervous if I'm Tennessee because of the way the other SEC teams have performed. I think that's going to be almost a must-watch game for me, at least, just to see how UCLA matches up with them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, UCLA is a team you do not want to see in the tournament because, I mean, they don't have Chaz Lanier, right? Like, or they don't have a Dalton Connect. That's what I'm
The other
talking
one,
about. They don't have Dalton Connect. Like they have players that are fine, that are good, like that can make things happen and are good scorers, right? Like they can do that. But at the end of the day, UCLA has the dudes to shut those guys down. Like I would not be surprised if this Tennessee UCLA game turns into a game that's in the mid 50s. Like it just that's kind of the craziness of it all. And we'll see what happens. There's 3 matchups. What is it? UCLA, Tennessee, Illinois, Kentucky, and Michigan, Texas A&M. People seem to be counting out Michigan in that one, and I'm just like, people were counting out Michigan against UC San Diego as well. I saw the potential for an upset there, and I thought, this is something people need to track. But at the end of the day, I was also like, Vlad Golden, Danny Wolf, like these are also really big dudes who can impose their will. So I do find it funny, though, Sonny, that the first 3 teams that were out in the NCAA tournament were West Virginia, Indiana, and Ohio State. The Big Ten and the Big 12 are combined 14-1 in the NCAA tournament. The teams that got in over them: North Carolina, San Diego State, Texas, and Vanderbilt. 3 of those teams are from the SEC and the ACC that have been complete disappointments in the tournament so far. Maybe, Sonny, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little crazy here. Maybe we only gave 3 bids to the ACC, and maybe we only give 12 bids to the SEC and make it a little bit closer and get Ohio State and Indiana. Am I crazy to think Ohio State should have been in? Like, you tell me. Ohio State beat Purdue at
Yeah,
Purdue. Ohio State
yeah,
beat Kentucky. Like they had their drop off at the end of the season, and Ohio State has nobody to blame but themselves for why they didn't get in. But at the end of the day, North Carolina with one quad one win,
right.
right? Like VCU 2-4 in quad one. Play an actual schedule. Play a schedule. Ohio State, they had a top 20 schedule in the nation. They played multiple for the entire season too. It's completely crazy to me that we're letting teams with 2-2 quad one records and
Right.
1-12 quad one records get in the tournament over teams that like Ohio State and Indiana that played nearly 20 quad one games and in Indiana's case they didn't lose a single game that wasn't a quad one game and these other teams getting in over them. It's just crazy to me.
It is crazy and it's embarrassing because you and I have talked about this. Like Brad Underwood built this difficult schedule on purpose. He's talked about it all season long that he wanted this team ready for March. And Ohio State having a difficult schedule themselves too. You're almost wondering, like, you have to balance it now because as a Big Ten team, you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt and be put in now, obviously, because these networks and these committee members are financially invested in their own school program. So you almost wonder if you have to swerve a little bit on your strategy and you have to go, no, just get the wins, even if it's against inferior opponents. Just try to lock down a big 22, 23, 24 wins for the season. Even though it may not prepare you for March, it'll at least get you into March. And that's not how it should be.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like you're exactly right when it comes to the harder schedule and everything else. Like, and I think Jake Diebler could learn a thing or two from a Brad Underwood, right? What did Brad Underwood, when the team wasn't performing well, what did he make sure to point out in his press conferences all the time? We're not healthy. Guys are sick. Things aren't looking good, right? Fans look at that and say, "Oh, excuses." Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, guess what? The NCAA tournament committee doesn't look at it that way. They say, "Oh, this team is sick. Maybe that loss to Maryland didn't look so bad because Tomislav Visic isn't there. Like, oh, the game against Kentucky, maybe they were still feeling the sickness, right?" And then Ohio State at the end of the season, Jake Diebler is on his radio show and he's saying, "Oh, you know what? We were super sick there at the end of the season. Really, the only guy that was healthy was Bruce Thornton. Everybody else, we had a couple cases of mono and stuff like that." I'm like, "What in the world? Why
Right.
weren't you talking about this? Like, why
Yeah.
wasn't this being discussed in the post game press conferences? Like, a guy like Jake Diebler should know that, but at the same time, he's a first year head coach. He doesn't know that stuff. He doesn't get that stuff. A guy as seasoned as a Brad Underwood does understand it, and he couldn't care less if people on Twitter call him an excuse maker or whatever, because at the end of the day, he got a 6 seed over a 7 seed. And I can tell you what, that 7 seed would have been a whole lot worse for Illinois because they wouldn't have had the second game to kind of get into a little bit of warm up. Who would you rather face, Kentucky or Tennessee? Kentucky by a
Right.
mile. Right? Like
Easy. Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
to me, this is the game that coaches have to play off the court as well as on the court. Jake Diebler needs to keep learning it, and it just goes to show why a veteran coach like Brad Underwood is so beneficial, not just for scheduling hard games, but knowing what to say after tough games as well.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. Coaching, both football and basketball. Illinois right now is very blessed in that sense that they have a guy in Brett Bielema who understands that in the football sense too,
Yeah.
that the game is not just played on the field or on the court. The game is also dealing with the media and dealing and exposing your brand and really trying to establish your name in the minds of the people, the influential people that are going to make the decisions moving forward. And like you said, I think this is just a simple matter of Brad knows how to play the game, whereas Jake is still kind of learning it.
Yeah, and I think that's frustrating for Ohio State fans because they just had two rough seasons and going into it from there. And I don't think Indiana fans are as upset about it because I think Indiana fans got what they wanted, right? West Virginia didn't make it. They didn't make it. They went ahead and took DeVries on over from West Virginia, and I think they're happy about that. So, and I think most Indiana fans knew, like, if they got in, it wasn't more than maybe a play-in game win. Maybe you would have had more than that, but it wasn't more than a play-in game win for that. So, I do think that's interesting. Last thing I'll bring up, and then we can get out of here, Sonny. Oregon.
Mhm.
Oregon should have been the greatest example there was that the Big Ten was better than people thought it was. But instead, what happens in football happened in basketball, where Oregon went to the Big Ten, they struggled, they had a hard time, and people said, "Oh, it was fool's gold. Oregon isn't actually good." When in reality, right? What happened with the SEC teams? The SEC
Yeah.
teams, like Alabama, lost out of conference games. They got into the SEC, they won some big games in the SEC, and people are saying, "Oh, look at Alabama. They figured it out. They're actually a great team." And we are all witnesses to greatness of Nate Oates now. Which, don't get me wrong, Nate Oates is a good coach, but to me, they had it backward. To me, Alabama was the team that they should have said, "Okay, maybe the SEC is a good conference, but it's one thing to not do so well in your conference, or to not do so well out of your conference and then do well in your conference, but to do really well outside of your conference, then come in. Maybe we give that conference that you struggled in a little bit more credit." Am I on here or off here?
No, you're 100% right. They had as many quad one wins as almost anyone in the entire country. And yeah, when they struggled, it was within the conference. And that's where, hand up, me included. I've been saying all season long, hey, the Big Ten Conference is a good conference, but they're not they're not an elite conference because I've been watching them night in and night out, but I guess the difference is because I cover this conference, right? And I cover the Illini, I wasn't watching the other ones near as much. So for me, all I saw was, hey, there's no Zach Edey Purdue team like last year in this year's allotment. I don't even think there was last year's Illinois team in this year's field, but that doesn't mean that these good teams aren't just really good teams. And I should have gotten a hint of that, like you said, from the out of conference schedule that these teams played, the Big Ten, in particular, Illinois, Oregon, they did pretty well for themselves. And it's, Illinois starts playing Big Ten teams and they finished 12-8, which is okay, but it's not like overtly impressive. And that should have been the first sign that we all just kind of missed.
Yeah, and got to shout out Purdue too. Purdue put together a
Yeah.
really tough out of conference schedule as well, and I think that helped them in a number of ways too. So, I mean, last thing, really fast, I just want to list off these losses for Oregon, and then we'll get out of here. Losses for Oregon: UCLA, Illinois, Purdue, UCLA, Michigan, Michigan State. Now, they did lose to Minnesota. That was also on the road, and Minnesota's been known to upset some bigger teams, right? It happens. And then they did lose to Nebraska at home.
Mm-hmm.
Those, okay, I get it. You shouldn't lose to those teams. But when the rest of those teams are UCLA, who has shown this season they're a good basketball team, Illinois, who has one of the highest ceilings in all of the country, Purdue, who was runners up last year, UCLA again, Michigan, who won the conference or who won the conference tournament, Michigan State, who won the conference overall. Like, I don't know. I think Oregon got dinged way too much, and it's unfortunate for them, and it's unfortunate for the conference. But here we are. The Big Ten is making up for it now. 8-0, soon to be 16-0. Right,
Ooh,
Sonny?
I like that. I like that. Yeah, no, I mean that Oregon game, I can't wait to watch that one too with Arizona. Two former conference mates. I'm sure that's going to have a nice little rivalry aspect of it. But again, the job's not done for the Big Ten Conference. 8-0 is a fantastic start. 7 of those being double-digit wins, fantastic start. But ultimately, if the SEC does have 4 of the 8 in the Elite 8, that argument starts turning around a little bit. So let's take care of Saturday, Sunday, and then we can for real start having a conversation about who is gypped and who is not.
There we go. Let's get 8 teams in the Sweet 16. That sounds awesome. Let's just do it.
I'm not sure it's possible, but yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah. Oh, it is possible. We got 8 teams right now. It's possible.
I think
The
Illinois
only problem is that in the Sweet
Illinois
16,
and UCLA would play each other.
in the Sweet 16, I'm saying though, right?
Yeah. Let's do
So
it.
you could have 8 in the Sweet 16. So
Sign me up.
Kim's in the chat. He says the South taking a bunch of L's. What is this? The Civil War? It's about that way again, there, Kent. About that way again. All right, Sonny, tell people where they can find you at really fast before we get out of here.
Absolutely. Locked on Illini. If you're an Illini fan, I do daily shows every single day, about a half hour long. Find me at the Sunny V on the social medias or Locked on Illini. Just send me a message. Appreciate you having me on, JR.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. We'll be back here again tomorrow night, everybody, after the final game. I don't know when they're scheduled. I think they have another nightcap game. Let me look really fast just to make sure I tell everybody. Yeah, UCLA is another nightcap game. It's supposed to start at 10. So it probably won't start till 10:30, and we'll probably be going till 1 a.m. again. So if you're on the West Coast, tune in. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good one.